Hello, and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. I joined a gift exchange on the InRange TV Discord and got sent some Scotch glasses, which are great. But I figured that meant it was time to do another Scotch video. Of course, the difficulty I thought would be, where am I going to find a topic? Normally they sort of happen upon me, but it really didn't take me long. A bicycle pursuit, brief struggle ends in arrest for man charged with pointing a firearm. This is out of the Windsor Star. I'll link the article in the description below. Of course, the first thing I think when I see this picture is, I don't think that's a gun. You know, it's got Luger stamped in the side. It's got Lone Star. That seems like an unusual make and model of a Luger. This does not look right to me. And sure enough, the first line of the article is, a Windsor man is facing several charges after he allegedly pointed a cap gun at someone, then tried to flee from police on a bicycle. So, the first headache here is I see this and he's charged with pointing a firearm. And I go, really? For a cap gun? I don't think so. My usual first thought on this is that the newspaper has to have gotten it wrong because they get it wrong a lot. Reporters are not lawyers. And while a news company may have lawyers on staff, they're typically going to be lawyers who do copyright issues and trademark issues and defamation issues and that kind of thing. Not so much criminal law. And I don't mean to denigrate lawyers who do those things. They're important things. They're just different things. I'm not going to wade into the defamation sphere. But, similarly, it means that often these reporters don't necessarily have the best advice and they make mistakes. So I was thinking, well, there's got to be a mistake in the article. And I kept reading. Basically, these two idiots, you can read the article yourself if you want all the details, but these two idiots get into an argument and one of them pulls out a gun and points it at the other one. The police respond. They eventually track this guy down. They find the gun and it turns out to be a cap gun. So I'm thinking, okay, they can't be charged with pointing a firearm, but then they note at the bottom, James Bondy, 35 from Windsor, is charged with pointing a firearm, escaping lawful custody, and 3 counts of possession of a firearm while prohibited. Now I'm going, They also note that they seized some ammunition, which is unusual. I'm not sure what sort of ammunition they seized with a cap gun. So with all of that in mind, I thought, okay, let's find the original press release, because this kind of article usually there's not a whole lot of independent thought that goes into them. Usually they're just kind of quoting the press release. So I found the press release. So case 2021-49202, firearms investigation results in arrest and charges. And they note, victim who was driving in the area at the time reported that the male suspect who was riding a bike pointed a firearm at him. The victim and male had a verbal argument prior to the incident, however, were unknown to each other. So this sounds like two jerks getting into a fight, probably some sort of road rage thing, although this is just purely my hypothesis. I don't know either jerk involved in this. But the police respond, and of course they're going to be looking for the guy who is said to have the gun. Police search. They find the suspect. However, he fled from officers on his bicycle. We'll come back to that later. Several officers converged in the area where the suspect continued to flee on his bicycle and then on foot. They caught up to the suspect and arrested him after a brief struggle. Officers located what appeared to be a black handgun on the ground in close proximity to the suspect during the arrest. While seizing the firearm, officers determined it was a cap gun. Officers also located and seized ammunition during the investigation. Okay, so they identified it as a cap gun, but then we see James Bondy, a 35-year-old male from Windsor, is charged with pointing a firearm, escape lawful custody, possession of a firearm while prohibited, 3 counts, and they have the picture. All right, now, I don't know if this guy did it or not. At this point, he enjoys the presumption of innocence, which means, of course, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. But let's take the police at their word for the moment, just for the sake of argument, because they've said that this is a cap gun. And in fact, when we look at the pictures here, you can see it says Lone Star on it. Well, I looked it up. This is definitely a cap gun. And, it's not even an airsoft gun or anything like that. It doesn't appear to discharge any projectiles. However, they've charged him with pointing a firearm. So let's see if they got that right. Pointing a firearm. Every person commits an offense who, without lawful excuse, points a firearm at another person, whether the firearm is loaded or unloaded. and you can get a penalty of up to 5 years for that. So, anyone else spotted the problem on this one? Yeah, the magic word here is firearm. There's lots of offenses where they say firearm or imitation firearm, but this is not the case. Pointing a firearm is actually an offense that is in some ways an offense of carelessness, because you can get this offense by pointing a firearm, even if you weren't sort of squaring off and pointing at somebody. You can get a conviction on this by waving a firearm, for instance, at the range. This is a charge that you might catch if you're being sloppy at the range, for example. However, so the main issue with pointing a firearm, the thing that it's intending to punish, is the fact that in pointing a firearm, there is a danger. Now, it does specify whether the firearm is loaded or unloaded. However, the reason why that's in there is twofold. First reason, the gun is always loaded. That's basic firearm safety, is you treat it like it's loaded, and the law does that too. Treats it like it's loaded. Second thing is just a proof issue. By saying whether the firearm is loaded or unloaded, they take a lot of the burden off the prosecution to prove things, because otherwise you'd say, listen, sure, I pointed the gun at him, but it was unloaded. And how's the Crown going to prove that it was loaded unless somebody tackles you to the ground right there and they seize the gun and it's got ammunition in it? So that makes the Crown's job a lot easier in terms of proving those. However, firearm. Firearm is the key bit here. A cap gun is not a firearm. The definition of firearm requires that it be able to discharge a projectile. So the police screwed up. They laid a charge that they can't possibly prove because even on their version of the facts, it doesn't make out the offense. Now, this does the accused a tremendous favor because first, as mentioned, he's going to walk on it. That's the best place you can be. But even if somehow they were able to get a conviction, the penalty is a max penalty of 5 years and no minimum. Now let's think about what would have happened if they charged him correctly. The correct charge would have been to charge him with assault with a weapon, that being a firearm or imitation thereof, and then a count under section 85 sub 2, using imitation firearm in commission of an offense. So every person commits an offense who uses an imitation firearm A while committing an indictable offense, which would include the assault with a weapon being a firearm, while attempting to commit an indictable offense, or during flight after committing or attempting to commit an indictable offense, whether or not the person causes or means to cause bodily harm to any person as a result of using the imitation firearm. It would seem to be difficult to cause bodily harm with a cap gun. I would actually be kind of impressed if somebody managed to do that. But let's look at the punishment here. Maximum punishment on a first offense for a term not exceeding 14 years, and a minimum punishment for a term of 1 year. So the actual thing he did is much more serious than what they've charged him with. I have no idea why they did this, other than I just think they didn't know the law. They don't understand the law the way they should, which of course raises the question, as you know, lots of law-abiding gun owners are doing their best to follow the law. And if the police can't get it right, how do we expect them to? There's some other interesting things in this press release. I see that they have also charged him with escape lawful custody, and they note the suspect was quickly located. However, he fled from officers on his bicycle. So that makes me wonder, did they ever actually get him into lawful custody? Because that's a requirement of that. Running away from the police might be a different charge in and of itself. So yeah, I have issues with this. They've also got him on possession of a firearm while prohibited, 3 counts. I don't know if that relates to this particular cap gun or if that relates to the ammunition. Which makes me wonder, why does this guy have ammunition with a cap gun? Is this guy dense enough that he maybe bought a gun on the street and thought he bought a real gun because somebody sold it to him with ammunition? Again, I don't know this guy, I don't know the file, but the possibility of that kind of makes me laugh. So, yeah. As mentioned, this sort of stuff is frustrating. I would love to see... Sometimes you win files just because people screw up. And in a perfect world, that shouldn't happen. In a perfect world, what should happen is that, you know, every charge is laid properly, and fought on its merits, as opposed to just, well, you guys accused him of something he didn't do. He did all sorts of things, but not that. As a defense lawyer, this is even more frustrating because somebody out there is going to utter those words that I just hate, which is, he got off on a technicality. Well, sure, if you want to call it a technicality that they screwed up and charged him with something he didn't do, and therefore he has to be acquitted because he didn't do it, then yes, I guess he'd be getting off on a technicality. You know, the fact that he might have done other things doesn't mean that he did what he's charged with. And again, he enjoys the presumption of innocence. I don't know if they even grabbed the right guy. I'm just, sort of assuming that the police are correct about everything they've said. But yeah, every time you hear he got off on a technicality, there's basically 3 flavors of technicality. Type number 1, police officers screwed up. Type number 2, a prosecutor screwed up. Or type number 3, they violated somebody's rights, which is really a flavor of 1 or 2 or possibly both. So that phrase always annoys me, but it's one of those things that you always hear at parties. Somebody say, oh, well, how could you get somebody off on a technicality? Well, if the technicality is didn't do it, that's not going to cost me any sleep. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Hopefully you've got a scotch as well. I also want to thank my Patreon supporters. I've got a link to my Patreon below. At the $50 level, Sir Daniel Wicks of Alberta, Jason Elliott, Canada's National Firearms Association, North Central Process Service, Kyle Martin, Jean-Guy Toussaint, Ivo Nedev, Christopher Molina, the CCFR, Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited and Marc-Olivier Damour. And at the $20 level, Matt Ward, Mark Whittington, Dale Nesbitt, Cameron Johnson, Andrew Elsich, and Adam Meester. I also want to thank everyone at the $10 level who will be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you for watching. I hope this has armed you with knowledge, and I do like these scotch glasses. Cheers.